So I'm going to talk about my story. A few people have been commenting on different coaches and how they learn to sing and speculation about this, that, and the other. So I figured I might as well put a few videos together talking about my journey into some detail. I grew up skiing, skateboarding, BMX when I was a kid. Started playing guitar when I was about 12, I guess, 12, 13. And sang a little bit then. I used to do Oasis covers. I remember doing Cast No Shadow, which is an Oasis song, one of the first albums I owned. What's the Story, I think it's called. I was big into Oasis when they were, and I guess when they broke, I think it would be in like 92, so I'd have been like maybe 93, 94. I would have been early teens. I didn't really think about singing then. I kind of figured anybody can sing, so it was all just subconscious and nothing conscious, no thought about learning to sing or improving. I just sang and that was my voice. But mostly I was a guitar player, so I did a little bit of singing, but eventually I moved on to more specifically guitar, and I pretty much stopped singing really. So I was into blues guitar. Stevie Ray Vaughan, there's a picture of him here. B.B. King, Eric Clapton, these kinds of players, and Albert King, older blues players really. So I was kind of mad on that for a while. I guess I used to play a fair amount of guitar. This was through my teens. I wouldn't say I was like obsessive about it. I enjoyed playing a bit of guitar, but it wasn't my primary focus in life back then. Music wasn't. Like around this time as well, I was riding my BMX, I was skateboarding, doing all that still, and I was socialising out in the parks in the evenings, things kids do. So I'd say maybe an hour a day, 6 or 7 hours a week. I was maybe 5 hours a week I was playing guitar. It was more just a hobby I did on the side really. Eventually I went to college, and I continued. I did like a pop music course there. Basically I did my GCSEs and did really badly, and I had to do a catch-up course, and then I happened to get into a college course for music. And like I said, music was a hobby, and I thought, well, maybe I should take music a bit more seriously. So I went to college and did a course there. I did actually have to do some singing there. Each term we'd be put together in different bands, and so we'd have a random kind of 4 or 5 people in a band each term, and we'd have to produce a set of songs, and then at the end of each term we'd do a gig as part of our coursework basically. So each band that was put together, sometimes you had a singer, sometimes you didn't, and if you didn't have a singer, one of the other musicians had to be a singer as well as what they did. So sometimes I ended up being a singer. One of my earliest memories actually is when I'd kind of put my hand up to say, yeah, I'll give this song a go, and we were rehearsing that song for a while. And I remember we were rehearsing one day, and this guy called Ben just said, this isn't working, I'm going to have to sing this song, and kind of just basically stepped forward in front of the microphone and just asked me to step aside. Back then I had pretty low self-esteem, to be honest, very little confidence, and that was a tough memory. I remember thinking, I don't know, I remember being at college and thinking that I was trying to sing, but it felt quite difficult emotionally and physically as well. So, but I just thought that at the time that that the voice you were born with, the voice you have is the voice you're born with, as in, I didn't think, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I just thought, oh, maybe my voice is just harder to use than other people's, and so I have to try it, or I have to work a bit harder. I didn't think anything of it other than that, but I couldn't get to any high notes really or anything like that, certainly not easily. So it was mostly just yelling and stuff, but I didn't realise that at the time. Anyway, I remember another college band I was in that was a good band, with a friend of mine that I'm not in that much contact with anymore, but I sung a song in that one, and we got to the point where when we did our show I was still singing that song, and I remember having to like screech to get to the high notes and just like so much strain and push, but we did the show and it was okay. I remember feeling super self-conscious. Back then I suffer from some stage anxiety or stage fright, however you want to describe it, but back then it was really super hardcore. I remember most of the time, whenever we did these shows at the end of term, I would be basically, it would feel like I'd get on stage and I would be in a tunnel. My vision would go to a tiny little pinholes. It felt like my heartbeat, everything, like the sweat, like just complete and utter like exposure. Severe stage anxiety. So that was in full force. But I remember getting off the stage after that show and feeling totally emotionally exhausted, and because it was the first one I'd sung on stage, and I remember my friend's dad saying to me like, "Oh, you did well, like your singing was good," and I remember thinking like, "Oh, he's just saying that," and feeling really self-conscious about how crap it was. And after I left college, though, I didn't really sing. I just played guitar. I went to university and I did music there, and I didn't really enjoy the course. To be honest, I fell out of love with music a lot when I was at university. I hardly played, bare amounts as I had to get by the course and do that stuff. Then I was into playing Counter-Strike, which is an online game. I was really into that, and some other team games online via PC and internet. So that was my main focus then. I fell out of love with music. I just felt like it wasn't really for me, to be honest. I used to practice a bit of guitar, like I said. Got through the course. I had a girlfriend at the time, and that didn't really go very well in terms of relationships. This is probably actually one of the lowest points in my life when I was at university and in my 20s in general. So I was coming out of my teens into my 20s at university. Like I said, playing guitar. Finished university and stopped playing guitar completely. In fact, the last year of university, I basically swapped around a lot of my practical courses, as in like guitar grades and stuff like that, and just replaced them all with like essay work. So I pretty much stopped playing guitar completely from the second year of uni through to the third year, and then when I came back after uni, I completed my degree, which I was pleased about, because I basically did very little work, and then for the last 3 months I had to catch up on about a year and a half of work, and it was a horrible grind, but I was pleased I got through it, just because it costs a lot of money, and you know, I had another friend that went to university and just dossed around like I was, and then didn't pass his degree, and I always felt like I'm glad I just got through it. So anyway, I came home, stayed with my mum for a little bit, and then moved to London. And I wasn't playing any music at all at this point. I'd basically moved on from music, and moved to London. And this was about a year and a half after I got back from university. So probably about two and a half years since I played music at all. And when I moved to London, I thought, well, maybe I should just pick up my guitar a bit and play a little bit. So I kind of got back into that a little bit. And anyway, there happened to be some open mics near where I lived, and I thought, oh, like I quite like working at stuff on my own. Like, the thing I didn't like about music so much was working with bands and groups. Like, I always wanted to do my own thing, and so I went to a few of these open mics and realised, well, I can work on music on my own, and then I can do what I want. I can practice when I want. I can go in any direction I want. I can do basically what I want to do. I don't have to worry about organising people, finding the right people, you know, all the logistics that go into being in a band, the band falling apart, you know, different goals, people want to go in different directions in terms of style, this kind of thing. All that stuff I could just forget about. So I figured I'd do some stuff on my own, but then I realised, well, if I'm going to do stuff on my own, I've got to play guitar and sing. So I started rehearsing some songs, I think mostly covers, but I did start writing a little bit then. I'd written a few songs before when I was younger, but I started writing a few of my own songs, and they weren't very good, but I kind of put some stuff together, a few covers, and then started to go out to some open mics and play. So my first, because I'd played guitar a fair amount in my teens, I kind of thought, well, I thought I was a pretty good guitar player at the time, but I was an average guitar player, intermediate guitar player really. So I went out and thought, well, putting and singing stuff together is not going to be that hard, because you just, whatever voice you have is whatever voice you have. So I just did my best with it when I was rehearsing and stuff. When I started doing shows though, the thing about open mics that's different to watching bands and stuff is that because there's so few instruments, just vocal and guitar, it's very exposing in terms of you get a very clear sense of where a musician is at as an individual, their ability. If there's problems with their singing, with their guitar, these kinds of things, with their songwriting, it's really, really plain and clear and easy to see, because there's no show to kind of hide the problems, if that makes sense. You've got a band, you've got loads of instruments, a lot of noise, people are often dressed and performing, so you can get drawn into the performance, and there's a lot of things that can draw you away from just the basic music, whereas open mics, solo musicians on their own vocal and guitar, there's very little to hide behind. So I performed at quite a few of these open mics for a while, and it didn't really go that well. Obviously at the time I was still suffering from stage anxiety, so it was very nervous for me, and I did not enjoy it, but I wanted to do it, so what choice do you have? One thing I came across, and I'll put a link to, I think there's some old videos of this guy singing, a guy called David Best, who really shifted my whole perspective on music and gave me a vision in terms of what music could be if you were good at it. There's still a few old videos. He doesn't really play music anymore. He stopped quite a few years ago. I think right now he is actually recording with a friend, but at the time I was in awe of this guy. So he was a few years younger than me. I think he would have been about 21 and I would have been about 24, 25. So but he had lots of good stuff together, good guitar playing, just a good sense of intuitive sense with his music, great range on his voice, really nice, clean, crisp sound, very efficient type of sound. And I remember I used to go play at this open mic at the Snooty Fox, which is near Canterbury in London, and I remember sitting down and watching the first time and just being like, it changed my life, man. It changed everything I thought about music, everything I thought it could do. I realised I'd never really seen a good musician live before. As much as the college bands and things were fun, I'd never really sat down and watched a professional musician. He wasn't professional at the time, but somebody at that level of ability, performing on their own, and it blew me away. So I realised, right, I actually really do want to sing. I want to sound like this, professional sounding, good sounding. Started to wonder about it and started to kind of think about singing for the very, very first time, really. Up until that point, I'd never thought about singing. I just sang. That was it. It was all subconscious. So I was unconsciously incompetent at the time. I was incompetent, but I didn't know. So in some ways, actually, back then, some of my singing was relatively confident because, at least compared to what came after that, because I was ignorant of the problems almost. I just pushed as hard as I needed to get the notes out, and that was that. So the anxiety was a lot more just to do with, being on stage and being exposed, that kind of thing. It was not I wasn't necessarily self-conscious about my voice, oh, that sounds bad, that sounds good, that kind of thing.